Everybody knows, at least generally, what photosynthesis and cellular respiration do. But do you really know the depth of those topics? Do you know the history, the science, how they evolved? Well, I'm sure you don't. Well, you know that photosynthesis creates oxygen, and that cellular respiration turns nutrients into energy. But how? Why? Well, let's find that out. Let me take you on a quick journey. So, you want to know about photosynthesis? Well, according to my handy-dandy pocket dictionary, photosynthesis is the formation of carbohydrates by chlorophyll containing plants exposed to sunlight. But isn't there so much more to that? Now, photosynthesis, of course, as just mentioned, produces carbohydrates. But it also produces oxygen. Now, you may be wondering, how does it produce it? Well, I would have the perfect thing to explain that, but I don't really have a paper on me right now, but... Well, this is surely convenient. So here is a balanced formula for photosynthesis. As you see, we have what goes in, which is carbon dioxide, water, and then with light, we get glucose and oxygen. Now, look a little closer at these writings that I don't know who possibly could have left out here. We see there's actually two things happening: the light reaction and the Calvin cycle. Now, what are those two things? Well, I'm about to show you. And I won't litter, so I'm gonna throw this out. But here we go. Now, the plant cell has what is known as the chloroplast, which the chloroplast is where photosynthesis takes place. So, first, let's find the parts of a chloroplast, shall we? So, first, we're gonna start from the outside in. We have the outer membrane. And big news, what's after the outer membrane is the inner membrane. And then inside here, we have the stroma and thylakoid. Now, multiple thylakoid are called a grana. Now, the light reaction, which is the first part of photosynthesis, takes place in the thylakoid. And the Calvin cycle, which is the second reaction, is over here in the stroma. So, now, going over to the light reaction. Alright, so this is the light reaction. Now, this may look very confusing, but I was also pretty confused by it at first too. So, there's actually two parts to the light reaction. We have photosystem 2 and photosystem 1. Now, for reasons I'm gonna get to in a couple minutes, we're gonna start with photosystem 2 first. So here, light from the sun, red and blue, go in, while green gets reflected. Now, what also comes in is H2O. Now, while these two meet, a process called photolysis occurs. And electrons in here are getting quite excited. But what also comes out is O2. Now, back to those excited electrons. So these go into the electron acceptor, I think that's what it's called. And then, after that, they go through the electron transport chain, which could produce some ATP, which it's not the main way ATP is produced in this. Now, here, we go to photosystem 1. Now, you may be wondering why I started photosystem 2 and then went to 1. Well, that's because photosystem 2 comes before 1. The reason they're named that is because photosystem 1 was discovered first, and photosystem 2 was discovered after, which makes no sense now and is just confusing. Now, here, more light gets accepted, and there, P700. Now, light goes in here, excites electrons as it does, and then goes to this electron acceptor. Now, here, what happens is NADPH is created. And that's because NADPH, product of NADP plus H plus, and then it creates it. Now, H plus is actually all over the chloroplast. It just needs to be brought in. And the way it's brought in is with these electrons, going through the electron transport chain. Now, going through here, as a product I just mentioned, NADPH is produced. But what also is produced is ATP. Now, these electrons actually end up right back in photosystem 1. And the way that happens is from the cyclic, I gotta look at the paper here, the cyclic electron flow. Now, that's both photosystem 1 and photosystem 2. But you see, there's actually one product here, and H plus is still in here, right? So, O2 as a product, right, which is actually a waste product from photolysis, needs to go through channel proteins. And what also needs to go through channel proteins is H plus. So, H plus and O2 go through it. But funny thing that happens is, when H plus goes through the channel protein, a funny reaction occurs where called ATP synthesis, where ATP is made, which causes ADP and P to make ADP. And that would be the end of the light reaction. So now, the second part of photosynthesis is the Calvin cycle. Previously known as the dark cycle, but never call it that now. So, let's move on to that. Alright, so, this is the Calvin cycle. And it occurs in the stroma, as mentioned before. We start with CO2 over here, and then that goes and makes 6 carbon. Now this 6 carbon is actually pretty unstable, so it splits and makes PGA, well 2, which is 3 carbon. Now we're going to start here, so PGA here, with the use of ATP and NADPH from the light reaction, go ahead and make PGAL. Now PGAL produces a couple things, but the main thing we're going to say right now is it produces glucose. And what glucose is in is, if I take the paper that I didn't throw out, is a product in the balance equation for photosynthesis. So that creates glucose. Now, if we actually head back over to here, 6 carbon splits into PGA, goes down, and also using ATP and NADPH makes PGAL, of course. But then this PGAL comes over here, and I also forgot to add something. Goes over here, makes 5 carbon, and then this goes using ATP, makes RUBP. Now, cool thing about RUBP is it actually is both a reactant and a product of the Calvin cycle, and it takes 6 cycles to create it. And honestly, this was a lot easier to explain than light reaction. So that's the Calvin cycle, previously known as the dark reaction, which is a term that should not be used, and I'm just saying that for context in case you research it more. Okay, moving on, we're going to talk about cellular respiration. But before we talk about cellular respiration, let's just look at this equation for photosynthesis one more time. So, now we know from the beautiful video that I just made that this carbon, we're gonna start here actually. This water goes through the light reaction and creates O2 as a main product. And it also creates NADPH and ATP, but that is used in the Calvin cycle which as we see is carbon. Then it goes over here and creates glucose using pGal. So that's the end of photosynthesis. Now really onto cellular respiration. Okay, now you're probably wondering what cellular respiration is, but about right now I'm going to show you. So here we go. Now, cellular respiration, according to my great and handy-dandy pocket notebook, is the process used by all non-phototrophs that creates energy with sugar using oxygen or without using oxygen, depending on if it's anaerobic or aerobic respiration. Now, cellular respiration. Now, this right here is a non-autotroph cell. Here we have the mitochondria, which is where 2 of the 3 processes happen in aerobic cellular respiration. So let's get started on that. First, we have sugar and 2 ATP going into the cell. These come together and start glycosis. Now, glycosis breaks down the sugar and produces 4 ATP, and that would be 2 net outcome of ATP. Then it also produces 2 NADH, not NADPH, which is what photosynthesis makes, and then also 2 pyruvic acid. Now, this 2 pyruvic acid over here goes into and splits to 2 acetyl-CoA and 1 NADH. Caught myself there. Now, this 2 acetyl-CoA goes into the second step of cellular respiration. Right here, the Krebs cycle. Now, the Krebs cycle takes this and produces CO2, which is a waste product, 2 ATP, an NADH, and 2 FADH. Now, we're all going on to move on to the third step of aerobic cellular respiration. So here we have the electron transport chain. Now the electron transport chain takes these 2 NADH, this NADH here, 2 FADH over here, and the NADH there. It all feeds into the electron transport chain, and then those electrons in there are getting really excited from that, and it produces an outcome of 34 ATP. So that is aerobic cellular respiration. But now, there's one more less efficient version of cellular respiration, which is anaerobic cellular respiration. Now, in quick way, because it's very short, it's just glycosis, except it produces lactic acid, which makes you sore. And that would be all of cellular respiration. Now, on to the end of the video. Well, that was photosynthesis and cellular respiration, and I hope I get a 100 on this project. Anyways, see you next time. Michael, out. Take 1, script 2. No cellular respiration. Everybody knows, at least generally, what photosynthesis does. It creates oxygen. But how? Like, what's the history behind that? And how did it happen? Evolution? Like, what? Anyways. You can't laugh.
Recorded.
Just going down over here and don't record me going like.
Yeah, I saw the mat in that one. That one we're not gonna use. Definitely.